Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be, so to speak, your dessert. I hope you enjoyed lunch and you're not too tired to listen to what I have to say. I'm going to present to you a shared work that I'm currently still working on with together with Noach. We were thinking about integrating the topic of grandparenthood into discussions on determinants of early retirement preferences in Europe. It's important for me maybe to emphasize that we're looking at preferences to retirement and not retirement itself. It has some advantages. I'll touch upon it briefly next. The motivation for our paper is what we've been discussing in the last couple of days. Basically, we've seen an increase in longevity, a decrease in the share of individuals aged 54 to 65 approximately who work, or if not a decrease, then anyway some low shares of those persons, and a general delay in family formation and declining fertility rates, as Anna presented to us this morning. Our focus is, however, on the later points. So we're going to talk about retirement aspirations and its connection to family formation or family structure. The aim is to explore family-related factors that contribute to our understanding of retirement preferences among individuals, and we're focusing on individuals aged 50 to 64 located in Europe for now. The contributions we hope to make with our paper are the following. First of all, we wish to supplement existing knowledge on associations between family and work. More explicitly, we would like to extend family-related explanations into the third generation, so grandchildren. And in the process, we hope to test for potential differences between countries in associations between grandparenthood and retirement, or more explicitly, retirement preferences. I'm going to give you a brief theoretical framework. If you're interested in it more, then you can read the paper. Then I'm going to shortly describe the data we're using, show you some descriptive statistics, but only a few. Then discuss the main findings of the research and close up with some conclusions. So, as a theoretical framework, we picked up on something that is called linked lives. The main assumption behind which is that life courses of different individuals are related and consequential for each other. And we know this from partners, that if one partner decides or wishes to act in a certain way, this may have consequences for his partner. We've also know that this kind of behavior is also typical to relations between parents and children. So if a child makes a decision to move somewhere, this has immediate consequences for the parents. And we also think that we can see such crossings of life courses when it comes to the third generation, particularly because if a child gets a child, the parents are immediately affected, so the grandparents in our situation. Importantly, we think that there are reasons to expect that this linked lives effect would be different with regard to grandparents and their grandchildren according to some typology that basically means that there would be differences if the grandchildren are paternal, so the children of the daughters of our respondents, or paternal, so the children of the sons of our respondents, and maybe also if they have grandchildren who can be classified as both. So basically what we're trying to see is whether there is a difference between the parents of a mother who became like the parents of a daughter who became mother, and other categories of grandchildren. We think that considering the gender roles that we know, there is a reason to expect that the grandmothers, particularly of the children of daughters, would be more motivated to exit, so to retire, than other cases of grandchildren. The data we're using to test these hypotheses is the shared data, the Survey of Health, Aging and Retirement in Europe. We're going to use both the 2004 and 2006 waves, but only in the 11 countries who participated in both waves. So what we have as a sample is a pooled data set of 6,662 respondents who all participated in both waves. our respondents are slightly more, we have a slightly bigger group of men. The ages are, as I said before, 50 to 64, and everyone is currently employed because we're interested to see the effect of grandparenthood on their preferences for retirement. So we thought there is no interest in looking at people who are already in retirement because their preferences are pretty much clear at that stage. The variables we're looking into, the dependent variable is whether a person is looking forward to retire as early as possible or not. And apart from the grandparenthood issues that we are theoretically interested in, we also control for number of children, for whether the person is living with a partner or not, education in very rough or robust categories. We also look at labor market status, so whether the person is an employee, self-employed, or a civil servant, we also control for household net worth, for income from work, and I mean only income from work, so paid income. Pension types, again, in rather robust categories. If I'll have the time, maybe we could tap into this issue of pension type later on. We also control, of course, for gender, for years in main job, so how many years has a person been working in the job it's currently working in, the number of years left till retirement, number of years left to retirement, meaning number of years left until pensionable age. This would be the more accurate way to explain this. We also look into leisure activities. This taps into the same categories how we referred to yesterday morning, so whether people participate in communal work, in courses, and other stuff outside work. And we also control for ill health. This is a first impression from a comparison only in frequencies, so how many of the respondents in each of the countries we look into actually said that they are looking forward to retirement as early as possible. I think one can get a slight impression by the low agreement for this item in the Netherlands and also in Switzerland in comparison to high rates of response in Spain and also in Austria and Greece. In these countries, as I said, we have higher percentage of respondents who say that they are looking forward to early retirement or to retire as soon as possible. This is the situation when we look at gender categories. So women are clearly less excited about retiring early. Men are more looking forward to retirement. And finally, if we take our categories of grandparenthood, you can see that the least looking forward to retirement are those respondents who do not have grandchildren. The most looking forward to early retirement are exactly those persons we expected to be looking forward to retirement, namely respondents who are maternal, who have maternal grandchildren. I remind you, maternal grandchildren, the children of the daughters of our respondents. The situation is also clear if we compare between maternal grandchildren, unclassified grandchildren, and both maternal and paternal. Let me say something about this unclassified category. The shared data is hardly as perfect as we would like it to be. And therefore, when I say maternal or paternal, this means that I can only speak or only be sure of the fact that these individuals actually have children or grandchildren that are children of their daughters. I cannot be sure, however, because of the way the data is structured, that they definitely do not have also children that are grandchildren that are paternal. There is a problem of identification simply because of the way the data is coded in the share. Maybe if this is not clear yet, we can discuss it later in the discussion. This is why I have this unclassified grandchildren for which I know that they have grandchildren, but because of issues of identification of the sex of the children or the affiliation of their grandchildren to either of the children that they specified, I could not clearly decide whether these are paternal or maternal grandchildren. So this is a challenge and difficulty of the data that I have. These are already predicted probabilities from the models we ran. What you can see in front of you now is the predicted probabilities of men and of women with maternal grandchildren. So in both cases, they have maternal grandchildren. And to what extent are they looking forward to retirement? What we see is basically that, as in the descriptive statistics, even after controlling for all these variables that I discussed with you before, we see the same picture. Women are clearly and over the board in all countries less excited about going into early retirement or retiring as early as they can. The next slide presents the predicted probabilities of women with or without maternal grandchildren to be looking forward to retirement. And as we expected, you can see in the lower line that the probabilities of women with maternal grandchildren to be looking forward to retirement are higher than those of women without maternal grandchildren. It is maybe important to emphasize here that for men we did not find such a difference. So for men there was no difference between having maternal grandchildren and not having grandchildren at all. This was only significant for the women in our sample. As I said briefly before, another question we wanted to provide an answer for was whether these differences in grandparenthood are constant across the different countries that we have, so mainly in Europe. And what we did in order to do this was to include, first of all, dummy variables for the different countries that we have, holding Denmark as our reference category. And in the second step, to combine interaction effects in order to test whether there are differences between the countries if respondents have maternal grandchildren or not. In a third step, we tried to group the different countries that we got into three main groups, namely Central Europe, South Europe, and North Europe. And what you see in front of you here is the outcome of these interaction effects, comparing respondents from South Europe with maternal grandchildren to respondents from Central Europe, again with maternal grandchildren. And interestingly enough, you see that there is a difference, namely that South European respondents with maternal grandchildren show higher excitement or are more looking forward to retirement or have higher probabilities to be looking forward to retirement if we compare them to respondents from Central Europe. The same exact picture emerges also when we compare South European respondents with respondents from North Europe. Just to be clear about the categories, Northern Europe includes the Netherlands, Sweden, and Denmark. We have in Southern Europe, Spain, Italy, Greece, but also France, simply because from the analysis we conducted before, we saw that the patterns in France are more similar to the South than to Central Europe. And in the Central European category, we have Austria, Germany, and Belgium, as well as... this is just another graphic presentation of these predicted probabilities, this time for South European individuals with or without maternal grandchildren to be looking forward to retirement. And again, you can see that for South Europe, respondents with maternal grandchildren do show higher probabilities to be looking forward to retirement if we compare them with respondents from South Europe that do not have maternal grandchildren. It is also maybe important to stress that, again, that the category of comparison were respondents without any grandchildren. Just to make sure what we are observing, we also ran a set of regressions comparing respondents without any grandchildren to all other categories, so whether they have grandchildren of all types that we just discussed. And the pattern of effect is very similar. So we constantly get that for women there is a significant effect if we use persons with grandchildren as a reference category, regardless of which kind of grandchildren it is, then respondents without any grandchildren, if they are female, show simply lower predicted probabilities to be looking forward to retirement. So the finding remains rather robust. Maybe just to conclude what I just showed you, we think, based on the findings that we retrieved until now, that evidently grandparenthood does matter. I think the next paper would not argue with me about this. We also know that grandparenthood matters more for women, so grandmothers, than for men, the grandfathers. And I don't want to take any sides in it or offend any of the grandparents present. We also think that grandparenthood matters more in Southern Europe and France than in the rest of the countries we observe in our data set. This may lead to the following conclusions: that changing family structures continue to affect individuals also when they reach retirement age, particularly in the case of grandchildren. I think this is rather interesting because in literature that we've seen and read, there is a lot of attention given to marital status and sometimes also to number of children or whether the children are living at home or not. But we believe that at the age of 54 or 60, the role as a parent is not as dominant in a person's life than its potential role as a grandparent. We also find, as I said before, that there are cross-national variations in this effect. And now what we would maybe be happy to hear from you is some additional insight on how we can specify the mechanisms underlying this effect that we find. Three ideas that we already developed is, first of all, as I said before, gender roles. Maybe they are different across the different countries that we see. Maybe the woman's labor market participations are different, and hence when a mother gives birth to a child, the grandmother needs to step in more imminently in certain countries than in others. And it could also be related with childcare availability and maybe price in different countries. I spent the last 4 years in Germany, and from there I know that there is a very strong problem of daycare solutions for young children, and that this is a big issue there, and they are currently trying to raise the situation or to bring the situation to be such that 12% of the kids would be taken care of in daycare facilities. So they're not even that far. So this is as far as we reached until now. There are some limitations of the data which prevented us from going forward, for example, with this question about labor market participation of the daughters, simply because the share does not provide information about that. We could look elsewhere for answers. For the rest, I'll be happy to hear your ideas and comments.